welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. Let's see, it's Tuesday, I think June 18th, 2024. Usually I look at the date before we're live on the air, but today I suppose that I forgot to do so because today is a very special episode of Timeless. We have a guest in studio today. And we've had guests in studio on the show before, but never in this iteration of the show where it's a live stream. So our guest today is probably like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Absolutely. That's right. My guest today is Jeff Astrof. Mr. Astrof is a television writer, producer, and showrunner with a 30-year-long history in Hollywood. He's most famous for writing for a show you may have heard of, Friends. Mr. Astrof has also written for Grounded for Life, New Adventures of Old Christine, Ground Floor, Angie Tribeca. He co-created a show that you can now see on Amazon Prime called Trial and Error, and his most recent show was Shining Vale, which was available on Starz, starring Courtney Cox. And perhaps his most famous or formidable part of his resume, if I may speak for you, Mr. Astrof, yes, is that he's a fellow contributor in this book that I have publicized on this show many times and will publicize again. It's called Elevator Pitches for God. It's comprised of 70 contributions from people ranging from Hollywood writers to talk show hosts to senators to scientists, physicists. And so Mr. Astrof is a contributor, and that's why he's here today. Welcome to the show.
Whenever I'm in something, I'm one end of the range. Usually, like if I'm in a class or something, they say, it ranges from Jeff to, and then they'll name someone really smart. So the fact that I'm in the range with me at one end and you on the other end is good. I'm glad there's such a range.
I'm glad too.
Yes.
I'm really glad too. And I haven't read all of the contributions. Maybe you have, but
I think I have to tell the guy who put it together that I have, and I love them all. But I didn't. I'm very famous for not reading things that I'm in, or watching things that I'm in, or listening. It's sad to say that I probably will never see this interview or listen to it. Maybe I hope lots of people do.
Millions.
Wow, millions. That's why there's a range of you and me.
Yes.
Because you're in the millions. I don't know why. I think it could be my ADHD. It could be my my sister wrote a book about our family, and I have yet to read it. And I love my sister, but I think it's just I tend to push things down. And she's a great author and great writer too. Her name is Liz.
Well,
Astrof.
maybe she'll be in the second iteration of the book. I haven't read all of the essays, but to be a good interviewer, I did in fact read yours.
Oh, good. How was it?
Yesterday.
I did not read it. Was it good?
It was fantastic.
Oh, good.
And, we did this book about a year ago. The project came about a year ago, and we all wrote our contributions then. And again, not to speak for you, but when this book came out, I turned to my page and I went, I wrote that? Oh yeah, I wrote that. So your contribution was very good. Before we launch into all the kinds of discussions we'll have, I do want to quickly on this subject play. I don't know if you've even seen this, a video that the compilers of the project, Ron and Bruce, put together publicizing the project.
No, I haven't. You know what? Ron is watching this. I loved it. I thought
Ron.
everything was perfect. I love the book. It should be a bestseller.
It should be.
Yes, but yeah, sure. Let's watch it again together.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Yes.
Somewhere around here.
This is the story of two friends from college who came up with a crazy idea of inviting the greatest thinkers on earth to prove God in just 500 words. They didn't expect to get any responses, but they did. Ambassadors, senators, movie stars, captains of industry, scientists, media personalities, and more. They put 70 one-page essays in a book, which became a bestseller on Amazon, called Elevator Pitches for God.
Could you hear it?
I
This is
could
the
not hear
story
it,
of
but it
two
looked great, and it looks like it stretches from me to Spider-Man. So I think that's incredible range. Another incredible range
It
that
is.
I'm on one end of.
It is. Yes, I
Somehow
realized.
Neeson Black made the cut, and I did not. We have to go. We have to
I
talk
think
to Ron about
weren't
that.
you in there? I thought you were.
I think you might have thought I was Senator Joe Lieberman. Rest in peace.
Yes, rest in peace.
Yes.
It's amazing. He sadly passed just a week or two after the book was publicized.
Yeah.
Forgive me. I thought that I saw you in there.
It could have
Might have been
any,
the senator.
It could have been any older Jewish person. I think maybe it was Neeson Black that you were associating me with. Anyway,
Well, it's
yes.
great. It's a great project. It's a great little trailer, and they're watching live right now. So hello to them. You know, there's so much I want to talk to you about, and thank you for coming on to the show. Obviously, you've had a long career in Hollywood. Obviously, you believe in God if you're
Yes.
featured in that, and this is
Even if I'm not in the trailer necessarily, obviously, I believe in God. Maybe my belief should have been a little stronger to make the trailer, but it's okay.
I know we're gonna come back to this.
You know what?
throughout the
I
interview.
will confess now. I was in the Spider-Man costume, so yes, I was. in
That's
that
where he
trailer.
was.
That's where I was.
I love that. We're going with that. Yeah, I mean, just so much. I hope we get to it, all of it, in this hour interview that we have. This is what I do. I throw out what I want to talk about at the beginning so that we have to get to it.
Okay.
Want to, of
I'm
course,
here.
talk to you about your career. Want to talk to you about your belief in God, and I do want to spend some time on what it's like being a Jew right now in Hollywood, which is, you know, a particularly tenuous moment, shall we say?
Yes. You know, it's look, being a Jew. I don't think it's just being a Jew in Hollywood. I was at a friend's Shiva house today. That's the most Jewish sentence I've ever said. And he was saying that he's also, and he's a director, a writer-director, and he said, I predicted October 7th. I never predicted October 8th. And, like, in other words, you know that people were trying to kill us, but you never thought it would unleash this wave of anti-Semitism. So I was always, being a Jew in Hollywood for me is the same as being a Jew anywhere else. I grew up in Long Island, and I had swastikas carved on my locker. I was called a Christ killer. The baseball team wore Students for Hitler buttons, and wasn't that great a team. But, you know, but no one, I still remember, it's funny what you remember. I still remember there were only 2 people on the team who didn't wear a Students for Hitler button. And yeah, so you can imagine, like, I grew up, and it's very sad, because, not sad, but like whenever you do these, you're not old enough to do this yet, but like when you say we're now, you know, as far from when I was born, it was closer to World War II than now is to the 1980s or something. And I totally identify with the 1980s. I still think, although my sister saw something on the Brat Pack and said it's the saddest thing you'll ever see, but like that's how I grew up. I'm a child of the 80s, but you know, I grew up when there were a lot more Holocaust survivors and the memory was more raw, and there were no consequences in my school in Long Island to wearing a Students for Hitler button on a bus. And now, you know, once again, there are no consequences for, you know, saying that, for wearing a Hamas mask, or, you know, wearing a mask and wearing a Hamas or Hezbollah, or holding, you know, a flag at a rally in the most Jewish city in the world, in New York. And in Hollywood, it was also very, very shocking. And, you know, I just gotten through a Writers Guild strike, with the second strike of my career. If you work long enough, you'll strike a couple of times in you know, it's a union town. And I was very, very active in the strike, very, very pro my guild. And, you know, right after October 7th happened, there was no reaction. And, you know, we found out, in a group of us, like very high profile Jews, this is nothing, it has to do with, you know, politics or anything, but we got together and we were just like, what's happening? What about the guild that we stood by, like, so much and so strong, and gave up? You know, I lost a lot of my income this year, and I realized when you're part of a guild, you're part of a bigger movement. And they said it was too controversial to make a statement. There was too much pushback to make a statement. How could it be pushback? Like, it was a very simple statement. We think it's bad when you kill and murder Jews. Kill and murder, sorry. I guess kill and murder are different.
Yeah, kill and
murder,
or
kill
murder.
and or murder and or
Yes.
rape and or burn
Yes.
babies alive. That's bad,
Well,
objectively. So I think that a positive out of this, and a positive out of, October 7th, I think. I know we go from Hollywood to October 7th very, very quickly.
yes.
I think to be a Jew now, you go from anything to October 7th. You go from inflation to October 7th. You go from traffic on the 134 to October 7th because it's in your mind. Because, I think certainly to be a Jew, you have to be optimistic, even though my favorite Jewish joke is that Murray goes to, Shlomo and says, "Nu, how you doing?" And Shlomo says, in a word, good. In 2 words, not good. So that's kind of like the essence of being a Jew, is that you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. My production company is Other Shoe Productions because you're kind of waiting for it. And then just on October 7th, October 8th, really, everything dropped. And then you feel like you're alone, and you feel like, wait a minute, we built this business. This was like Jews built Hollywood. And because we had nowhere else to go. Businesses that Jews built always is because we had no place else to go. And I hate the fact that we have a reputation of controlling Hollywood, because if we did, I would not have time to be on your show right now. I'd be working on my own show. So it was just like, it was very scary for us. And these are, Jews across the political spectrum. I would say Jews across this political spectrum from far left to center left. That's the Jewish political spectrum. And we were all like, wait, where's our guild? Where's the people that we stood for? And they weren't there because it was controversial. So I think that's what it means to be a Jew. And, there's a saying, and I don't know if it comes from, I know 100% it's true. And I don't know if it's biblical or just it's biblical or, wherever it comes from, political. But when you forget you're Jewish, somebody reminds you. And that's what happened. They reminded us that we're Jewish and we're different, and we stand out. So that's part of being a Jew. I'm a proud Jew. I can't hide it because my face is a mezuzah, basically. But I'm a proud Jew. I believe in God, and because I believe in God, it's actually helped me through this to know that there's a bigger plan.
The only reason I understand that reference that you just made is because of my time with Dennis Prager, my co-host. As you know, I'm not Jewish,
right?
But Dennis is a very prominent Jew. And,
by the way, this is the spectrum of being not Jewish to not Jewish. I think if aliens came down and said we need a Jew and someone not Jewish, we would both be pulled up onto the ship. So there we go.
Well, these days anything can happen.
Yes.
Well, I want to follow up with a lot of what you just said, but I also want to acknowledge an elephant in the room, which is that you're in Hollywood. You're on a conservative-leaning talk show. It's interesting, Mr. Astrof. I'm proud to call myself conservative because fundamentally it is what I endeavor to do. I want to conserve the principles of the American founding. I believe this is the best, most noble system ever created. Has it not always lived up to that? Of course. Have we had terrible moments? Of course. Do we continue to have terrible moments? Evidently. But fundamentally, I want to conserve this country, and that's why I am proud and often say that I am a conservative. However, I really think this show isn't so much conservative. I think this show is a common sense show. I have said many times on this program, for instance, not to just dive into the controversy, but hey, here we are. I've said on this show before that I'm very morally and legally conflicted on the subject of abortion. I really am. I wouldn't call myself a pro-life absolutist nor a pro-choice absolutist. I think that's just normal, I'm pro-aborter. I think that's normal. I have a lot of sympathy for illegal immigrants, but I think we need a border. I don't necessarily, I could go through a litany of all my views. I won't bore you with that. But the elephant in the room is that you, as someone in Hollywood, are coming on to a show that yes, is conservative, but honestly, I just think is normal. And I can imagine that you either have or will get a lot of flack for that.
Okay, so first of all, I had no idea this was a conservative show, so that's good to know. Second of all,
You
I
didn't do your
assume
research?
I told you I don't look at things beforehand. I have time off now because I'm between projects, but I like talking about myself and I like talking about God and other things. I am, I obviously I assume that I'm being pixelated and my voice is changing, so there'll be absolutely no confusion. I don't know. I have a very centrist. I'm not here because it's a conservative show. I'm here
I'm
because
not
a friend of
asking
mine.
you to share your
No.
politics.
I know.
I'm just acknowledging an elephant in the room I know. I grew up in Hollywood.
Right.
I know how people get. It's crazy. If you go on a show that that they'll brand you as something that you may not be. I know how crazy it is.
Right.
I grew up in this.
No, I know. It's very interesting because I worked for the show Shining Vale with Courtney Cox, and I was on a podcast with somebody who runs a Scream fan page, and because Courtney was in my show, I love Courtney, and this guy Ryan was just a great guy, and because I had commented on Liz McGill, the president of Penn, I went to Penn,
Right.
and when she could not come out and say that calling for the murder of Jews goes against Penn's free speech, I just wrote in a thing on Instagram. I said, I want to start giving money to Penn so I could stop giving money to Penn. And then, so I'm on this podcast about my show, which I always go on podcasts about I thought this was about my show. Wow, this is real. boy.
You're in Spider-Man. It is. It's about
I am
your projects.
No, I don't know. I like to talk. So anyway, somebody said on this Scream podcast, you shouldn't have him on your show. He believes in genocide. And I was like, I didn't believe in genocide. I believe that killing Jews is bad. I want to come out strongly to say I'm very anti-genocide. And I'm also I think politically I'm very, I don't consider myself a conservative. I consider myself, very centrist. My wife and I, hosted Mommies for Kerry back a long time ago. And I have, certainly as I've gotten older, I think socially I've probably gotten a little more conservative, but I fit within the spectrum of Hollywood people.
Are you going to get flack for coming onto a show with someone who has a show with Dennis Prager? Who
I don't know. The
mean,
things I like about Dennis Prager that I think he's very sensible about. The things I don't like about Dennis Prager, I listen to I listen to CNN and I listen to Fox and I listen to MSNBC and I watch The Daily Show and I watch, there's things about other things. I don't like that, for me, the best thing I love is I like watching liberal people come out and say things that anti-Semitism is bad. And I'm here to say that. I like liberal people because I'm a liberal person who believes in God. I love that. I love that you can say that in the classic term of liberal, which is, open-minded. I have always had a problem that, I worked for somebody who was very, 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 she was very, very liberal. She believed in everything as long as it was exactly how she thought. And, and I had a problem with her because I was religious. And she had a problem because God was an invisible white man in the sky, and I don't live that way. And by the way, we got along famously, but that was always something that well, if you were so liberal, why can't I believe something different than you believe in? So that's kind of my agreement of liberal. I'm sure you and I probably, our Venn diagram of beliefs is probably very, very similar, but we probably have our outliers, me being in Hollywood and, growing up that way, are probably different than yours. My career is different than yours. But I don't know. I think people should be able to talk, and
they should be. That's the bottom line. I mean, in college, I was sent home from college for COVID lockdowns for a year, but my senior year, I had 5 roommates, so there were 6 of us, and I was the only conservative. All my roommates were liberal, and we were a very diverse crew. One of my roommates was born in Kenya. The other was born in Kazakhstan. The other was born in New York City, Boston. We're very, very diverse, but we all just love each other, and we were all able to talk. And they knew I was doing a show with Dennis Prager. I would do it out of my dorm room, if you can believe it. But I just bring up this elephant in the room because, as I had said to you off the air, I grew up in Hollywood, and I love Hollywood in a lot of ways. I mean, I think it has produced things that have made people very happy, brought a lot of joy. But right now in Hollywood, in my opinion, and I think this is the general American opinion, it's very anti-conservative. It lampoons conservatives. The stuff on the air generally is incredibly woke, I think, in a rancid way. Mm-hmm. And, you were speaking about the anti-Semitism. It doesn't really shock me, the amount of anti-Semitism that's coming out of Hollywood. But that's just to say I'm really grateful that you're here, and I can imagine just your being here, because Hollywood is so woke, may get you into some trouble. But I think that's BS.
I didn't realize it would get me in trouble.
Chat.
I have no intention of getting in trouble. I'm also like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm not, this is not a coming out for me, honestly. Right. This is just
it's not? No, I'm kidding.
It's like a fun,
I'm totally kidding.
A fun conversation for me, hopefully. It's very funny because my daughter went to Brandeis, and at Brandeis, and when she comes home, she's a radical leftist, but at Brandeis, she was a fascist. So I think that's kind of the same thing. Like here, I'm probably a radical leftist, but probably at work, I'm kind of, a fascist. But the interesting thing is I don't talk about politics at work because I don't think it has a place in the show. I don't like heavy-handed things. I don't think that anything you could watch of mine would let you know where my politics are.
That's good.
Yeah, and I don't think there's
too political these days. All these shows are so political.
I think that's the problem with it, is that I was meeting with somebody from this Israeli production company, and this is a litmus test. My kids don't know about All in the Family, but if you watch All in the Family, first of all, Carol O'Connor and Norman Lear are just incredible talents, very, very far to the left of the spectrum. And there's no way you could create a character like Carol O'Connor now. And, like Archie Bunker now. And, that's the thing that I mourn, is that you can't do, and because I'm a showrunner, I kind of don't, on my last show, Shining Vale, I guess we had, it was very, very rare because all my writers were women, because I was writing a show about women. So I can only write what I know, and because I didn't have the buy-in, I have the buy-in for mental illness, and my show is about mental illness. Thank God I come from a long line of mentally ill women. And, but I didn't have the buy-in from point of view from a woman. I was writing for Courtney Cox, so my writers were average age, oh, there she is, 50-something women, and not the number of women, that was their age, over 50, and women, and all my directors were women, and just because it made sense to me to write that. So I can't write that, and people, I just kind of write what I know and my worldview, and if not, I'll expand it. So for me, it would be very, very difficult to write. I wrote on a show called Partners, which was about a gay couple and a straight couple, and I know comedy, and it was not political at all, and we weren't trying to, and some of my conservative friends were like, how could you write that? How could you promote that lifestyle? And I said, I'm not promoting I'm writing what's funny, and I'm writing a truth. And a truth was that these two friends were best friends who had different points of view and different backgrounds and different, whatever. I'm sure that's going to get me in trouble because I don't even know how to express it now. But back, and that was only 7 or 8 years ago. And now everything either has to be black or white. And, I remember I did Trial and Error, which was my favorite show I've ever done. I love Shining Vale, but Trial and Error was just pure sweetness. And, one of the characters was a woman who had, she had every disorder known to man or woman. And
how very inclusive of you.
I was very inclusive.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And yes. I guess you could say man or woman still, I'm not sure. But she had facial
on this show
blindness.
You can.
She had facial blindness, and I thought that would be a great trait for an assistant at a detective agency, is that she couldn't recognize faces. And she was played geniusly by Sherry Shepard, who's a genius. And then afterwards, so I putting together writing staff, it got picked up.
It's funny. I don't want to talk about politics, it's sort of what you were saying earlier. I lament that Hollywood has gotten too political. You know, before the show, I was telling you that Sex in the City used to be one of my favorite shows. And when the reboot happened, I was so excited. And then I watched the reboot, and a lot of my liberal friends, we were watching, oh, thank you for that. That's good. Yeah, that's the reboot. And just like that, a lot of my liberal friends, you know, we would watch the reboot and we would sit there, you know, conservative me and then my liberal friends, and we would laugh about how absurd it is, because it is absurd. And you can disagree with me, obviously, but let's look at those casts of characters. Okay, so Miranda becomes a lesbian. Miranda's daughter becomes trans and has a they mitzvah instead of a bar or a bat mitzvah. Charlotte's that's Charlotte's child has a they mitzvah.
Okay.
You know, Carrie starts this podcast and it's all about sex and it's all about, you know, combating the patriarchy.
Right.
And I would love to sit across from you right now. And I actually would like to just ask you, irrespective of politics, what makes a good show, what makes a good story? That's really what I care about. But we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room,
right,
in my view, which is that Hollywood has become so liberal that, I'm sorry, I don't watch that show anymore.
Right.
Because it's being shoved down my throat. It's being shoved in my face. I can take a little woke. It's not about having the presence of woke in some shows. It's about the whole damn show becoming, I think, just a mouthpiece of wokeism. Every single character was transformed into this caricature of woke.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I think it's a bummer. I don't think it's a bummer. I didn't watch. I will tell you this.
Save your time.
I don't know.
Watch it.
No, I didn't. I was not going to watch it. I would maybe watch it to hate watch it. But here, in fairness, no writer in Hollywood wants somebody else to be successful. So let's just get that out right away. So I'm not going to watch, you know, Michael Patrick King get more successful. But yeah, I don't know. You say Hollywood is like a monolithic thing. I think, you know, I talk privately.
It's not.
No, but I think privately, like, you know, my agent says things will change, things will swing back, things will be. I mean, I've been told that, and I think it's, you know, I don't know. It's also made landmines that shouldn't be landmines. Like I always have like a very naturally diverse crew and cast, and certainly, you know, when I was casting Shining Vale, it depended on who the lead was. So the lead was Pat, and she was a woman, so it was Courtney Cox. And then once Greg Kinnear wanted to do the show, it's like, okay, so they have to have white kids.
Can I just pause you right there? Forgive me. Why is it not about merit? Why is it about a woman is the first, and then why can't we just pick good actors and good stories? Why is there this
that wound up
that
wound up being the case? But you do have to, like, for me, my problem is that, like, when things can look by like a point of view. Like, so I wrote for Friends, obviously, and we're just a bunch of like dumb, you know, 20-somethings telling our story. And it wound up being like, and it's really remarkable to me, and thank God it hasn't gotten canceled, because the residuals from Friends are actually, now that, you know, I'm between jobs, are very, very
Friends
helpful.
is such a great, talk about non-political, just a
it was
feel-good,
a very,
great
but
show.
I know that, and by the way, the creator of Friends, one of the creators of Friends, David Crane, was, you know, he was a out gay man, and we did so many gay jokes. Marta Kaufman, very, very progressive woman, very, very strong feminist woman, and we did Joey, who was like a male, you know, like embodiment.
How you doing?
Yeah, how you doing? Great people. I actually got to see a bunch of them last night. It was Courtney's birthday.
Happy birthday, Courtney.
Happy birthday, Courtney.
I'm
and by
sure,
the way,
I'm sure she's watching right now.
I hope she is.
I hope she is too.
Will you please tell Courtney, I had a great time at your party, and didn't return my text. But one of the things I loved was, like, her boyfriend is from Ireland, and he said, he was talking about like his experience as an immigrant. He said, this is the greatest country in the world.
It is.
And it is the greatest country. I still think it's the greatest country in the
God
world.
bless
And
you.
that to me is like, I don't think that's political to say that. And I know there's,
But it is.
I know, but that's why is
It's
that
crazy
terrible?
that it
Why
is.
that like a, you know, I don't know. I work with people who are less, certainly more like liberal than I am, and have liberal beliefs. And I work with people, I'm sure, who are more conservative than I am. It just doesn't come up. And it's just like, because we want to tell good stories. For me, everything I want to do is optimistic and hopeful. If there's an angry edge to it, if it's negative, and I was doing a horror show, and I still wanted to be about family. I wanted to be about family, and you know, but then they say, well, and different families do look different now, but I don't think you should force that opinion. And it's also like, and that's also like when you're coming back to Jews, like, so Jews, I remember I was on a show and I was the only Jewish writer on the show. And was very rare because it used to be that like, every room was just chock full of Jews. And then last few shows I've been on, I haven't had Jewish writers on my last two shows, and several years. And it's just that there's different people that you have to hire and different experiences, and I just think that typically Jews are very, very funny, because we have a shared experience, and which is fine. I was not like, get me my Jews. I wasn't doing Jewish stories necessarily. Everything I do is a Jewish story because again, and it's my experience. But, I just want to do stories about family, and I just wanted to, whatever my perspective is, but like to be told that you have to do this, you have to do this specific story and you have to represent that. I can't speak to that. I can't write. One of my friends works on the show, The Neighborhood. I have two guys who are running it are white guys, and they have to, they're writing for an African-American family. So I would have to have African-American people on the show because I don't have that world experience, but I don't think you have to say, this is my ADHD combined with Celsius, but let me go back to the story. Jews. So I went to this room where I was the only Jewish writer, and I said, and we always got into the thing about Israel always came up, and so I went around the room, and my showrunner asked me, if I only give money to Israeli charities, and I said I give money primarily to Jewish charities, not Israeli. And I give money I give over 10%. You're allowed, like, again, I'm an observant Jew, so we have to give between 10 and 20% of income. This year, because of the strike, I'm happy to say I give 50% of income. But we also believe that comes back to you, so I'm waiting for that. So I give a lot to Jewish charities. And so my showrunner said, well, isn't that racist that you only give to Jewish charities? And I said, how many Jewish charities do you give to? And she said, none. So I went around the room and I said, how many Jewish charities? Nobody else gave to Jewish charities. I said, so if you don't give to Jewish charities, and then I don't give to Jewish charities, no one's giving to Jewish charities. And she kind of got that. But then I asked, how many Jews do you think there are in the world? First I asked how big Israel was, and the average size was Texas. It's Delaware is the correct answer.
Or New Jersey.
Yes, yeah. New Jersey. Probably closer to New Jersey because of the shape. And then I asked how many Jews do you think were in the world, and the low end was 40 million. And the high end was 150 million. And I think the correct
answer... A little high. Just a
little high. By the way, seems like it. I get it, in Hollywood especially. I could say that. But, the correct answer is like 13 million. And so we're a percentage of a percentage. So part of the thing that happened after October 7th was when Jews started feeling marginalized in a business that, we felt very, very comfortable with from the beginning of the business. We started saying, wait, how come we're not represented? How come there's no Jewish committees on the Writers Guild? How come there's and every other group that's a minority, and we're a minority. I mean, we're a fraction of a percent. Again, we punch above our weight for sure. And certainly in terms of anxiety and use of the psychiatric benefits of our health plan, I'll grant you that. But why aren't we counted as a minority? Why can't I hire a Jewish guy and say we're less than 2% of the population? And you just can't. Like that's the brilliance of being a Jew, is that we are white to people who call people white, and then we're non-white to people who hate non-white people. So like I'm like, pick a side. Like you can't like. We can't, like, we're between river to the sea, and Jews will not replace us. It's like, where do we fit in? Like, we're being crushed on both sides. Like, it's you could see why we have this neuroses a little bit. It's like, let us pick a side, let us pick a team. So, like, when you talk about, like, conservative or liberal, like, I don't think when you say how's it like to be a Jew in Hollywood right now, I think it's uneasy because we don't have a side. We thought we had a side. We thought Hollywood was our side. And then it's kind of not. Now, that said, thank God, and people will say, well, Jews still are overrepresented in Hollywood. 20% of writers and 30% of the writers are Jewish, so you have your piece of the pie. And maybe that's true, but it's kind of a bummer because that was an industry we started. and we kind of want to have that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, not at all. I actually.
I was going to say something very funny too, and I forgot it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Well,
it's okay. It'll come back.
I
to
have
me
a
in
rule.
the car on the
I
way
always
home.
make this rule that I really try not to interrupt guests, but there are
Yes.
so many.
I know.
wanna
I'm
let
very
you-
yes.
No, I want to let you speak, and I very much appreciate all that you have to say. I want to cut in and ask some questions here. You know, you said earlier in the interview that you were shocked by October 7th. Or you said, I want to get your wording right, that you weren't shocked by October 7th, you were shocked by October 8th.
Right. So that was a good friend of mine said that, and I thought,
Right.
what a great line. And I don't think shocked, but like saddened by it.
You know, I have to say, I wasn't shocked by October 8th.
Right.
I think when for so long in this country we have divided people based on immutable characteristics, no wonder, it comes a reckoning now.
Right.
I mean, for so long, it has been this oppressor versus oppressed. Moral confusion has been allowed to spread. I mean, for years, we've just been dividing people. You're LGBTQ, you're Black, you're immigrant, you're Jew, you're non-Jew, you're this. And now it's metastasized after October 7th into this anti-Semitism. And
Right.
we in America have a terrible anti-Semitism problem right now. I mean, I was just reading the other day in New York, people are getting on the subway yelling, "Where are the Zionists?"
Right.
We see what's happened to college campuses. It's horrible. But I say with respect, I don't think it's shocking.
Yeah.
And when these views have been allowed to be promulgated for so long in Hollywood, in the mainstream media, in our country's culture in general, with regard to a lot of groups, no wonder right now it's the Jews are being come for, if you will. It's a terrible thing, but it's.
I guess the reason it doesn't shock me, I come from
I don't find it to be shocking.
I will say this: it's not shocking to me, and it's funny. It's not shocking to me, really, because I'm religious and because if you've been following along with the Bible, if you're keeping up,
Maybe not as well as you, but I'm trying.
But if you are, and I think you have a different book. I think you have the sequel. So, but in the original,
by the way, I'm actually would call myself an ethical monotheist. If you're
Okay.
interested, I don't know whether I would call myself a true Judeo-Christian. I don't
Right.
know if I believe in Christ. I just like the Judeo-Christian stuff.
yeah, it's done. It's served us well.
It has. Go on.
So, but like really, like everything is kind of, and again, just because I grew up with it, I grew up in the '80s with anti-Semitism. So it doesn't. It's familiar to me. It keeps me anxious. My kids, we had a very good period after the Holocaust where I think it was like a little bit embarrassing to be anti-Semitic, but like it's also like Jews also try to assimilate, which is again we're reminded that we're Jews. So it's kind of like, when you say that Hollywood has become this, it's like there hasn't been a ton of like really positive role models for Jews also. So I don't know that Hollywood promotes anti-Semitism. I think Hollywood people know what they write. People write what they know. So I think it's like a lot of, Bridget Loves Bernie. It's a lot of, stuff like that. A lot of stuff about intermarriage and and people not caring and, and Jews not being proud to be Jewish. I'm very happy that my kids are proud to be Jewish. I think that the answer to this is that, and that's why it's like sad to me, like if like we're very comfortable looking at right wing people hating us, not right wing, like hard right people hating us, and then like it's like the left wing people and like where
And the left-wing Jew haters are far more formidable in numbers and power than the right-wing Jew haters.
I think they're louder now and younger, and there's a very good, attractive group of them. No, it makes me sad though. It makes me sad, but I think I just think it's just I think it's ignorance. I think it's like again, it's like, man, oh man, you go to Israel and it's just like Tel Aviv is like the gayest city in the world. So when you see like Queers for Palestine, it's like, there's so many people who go, but then you call it pinkwashing. I don't know. I don't know enough. The reason, like, again, I probably would have done research to say I'm on a conservative talk show if I had known a little more, which is fine. This is a lovely conversation. But I don't know. I just like at the end of the day, are you being kind? Are you being good? I mean, I let my, you call about, ethical monotheism. It's like, yeah, I believe in God, and I believe that God has an active role in our lives and in the world. I think that this is like what's happening now is happening for a reason. I think it's very scary, and also, it's always the same thing. It's like what starts with Jews doesn't end with the Jews, and in terms of Hollywood, I think, I never, and maybe now more, maybe I'm getting older, because people always used to say, and a lot of people would say to me, it's like, because of the smut that you're putting out, that's why there's sexism, and because of this, that's why there's gun violence. And I hear it more and more, and, maybe I should take more responsibility for that. I know people would do that, but like, that's why I try to put, some stuff is fantasy. I think that people also have a responsibility. My kids don't watch my shows. And people are like, well, how could you, if you're a religious person, how do you put out this stuff? What do you do? And it's like, I don't put out pornography, but I tell my kids, I was like, look, this is, I don't think you're old enough to watch my shows. My kids, I think, just started watching, my kids were in their 20s, and they just started watching Friends. I know people earlier, and not that I think.
That's kind of late to be watching
I know,
Friends.
it's late. I don't watch Friends either, though, but that's because I just don't watch my stuff. But I know that Friends has universal, but not universal, because I know that there are people who, like, I've had African-American people come up to me and say it was like, that's a really racist show, and I never like
what Friends.
Well, just because it was all like white people, but that was the point of view of, and I remember being on that show, and again, that's 30 years ago, and like if you're going to introduce, like, it became a certain point, it's like, well, if you're introduce an African American character, they have to be, you better nail it, because this is like, and by the way, in the pilot of Friends, not the pilot, the first episode of Friends, no, maybe in the pilot, first episode of Friends, which I wrote actually. I wrote the first episode after the pilot.
That's so cool.
It's called The One with the Thumb, and where Phoebe finds a thumb in her soda. But, or maybe this was in the pilot, but Courtney's boss was an African American woman, and it just was that, and then the character didn't pop, so sad for her. But like, maybe that would have been a different thing, but it just like, the show got a life of its own. It was just about 6 friends, and and that was just the worldview at the time, and I don't know. I think it contributed a lot in terms of, for me, the funnest part is like people have come up to me and said, I watched Friends when I had cancer. I know that doesn't seem like the funnest part of anything.
No, but
people have said that to me.
Yes.
People said, wow, it made me laugh. And it's funny. I tell this story that when I was years ago, I was at like this synagogue group. Back I went to a Reform synagogue, and we went around a circle, and people were like, what did you do? And again, this is like 30 years ago. I was on Friends, and one person helped make the H-bomb and like felt guilty for that. Another person made the device for like delivering the H-bomb and felt bad about that. And I was like, I'm a sitcom writer, and people were like, boo. I was like, come on, man, this guy just made the H-bomb. Like, I didn't kill anybody. But people do, like, your words matter. And I think that's to your point now, when there's stuff. I don't watch a lot of TV, but to me, when you watch a TV and you see situations that seem to be forced, when every character has to have a certain trait, or I think there's probably not as many people are intermarried in, like, there's probably not as many multicultural families in the world as are represented on TV. And I can't write that. I mean, I married an Irish girl who's now a Jewish girl.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm an Irish girl.
I know. You have very similar traits. She'll be happy to hear that.
She's
live.
neurotic too, like me.
She has a Jewish soul, but she converted, and so
great.
my experience is, yes. So I have her experience. She came from a rural area of Oregon. I came from Long Island, but we're both very proudly Jewish and religious, and and moral, and give money to good causes. We adopt all our pets. We rescue pets.
Well, let's talk. I want to talk about that fun stuff.
Okay.
Again, forgive me for interrupting you, but
I'm used to it.
You're used to it. That's funny. With this whole Hollywood woke conversation, here's what I'll say as sort of a bookend to it, at least for now, unless you want to resurrect it, in 30 minutes. But you said you went to Penn. I went to Harvard.
Right.
People love to hate Harvard.
That didn't take long to come out, did it?
Hey,
it
took 40 minutes.
How long into every conversation does the word Harvard come out?
That is so funny. You know what?
I
I'll be
I
honest
also
with
went
you
to
right
school
now.
on the Charles River. I don't want to say where.
You're damned if you do, but
I
you're
know, and then
damned
you
if you
don't
don't.
because people
Poor
waiting.
me, right? Oh God, life's so hard for people like us. But no, but seriously, people love to hate Harvard.
Right.
And people love to hate Hollywood.
Yes.
And I said this, we did a show yesterday live, and I talked about how we need to make America nuanced again. And I coined
Right.
this term, mana, make
Right.
America nuanced again. I'm sure all the Hollywood people watching are like, oh my God, something resembling a MAGA slogan. I'm going to get hives.
Wait, what do you
But,
mean all the
you know,
Hollywood people? I think just my wife is the Hollywood
Okay.
person watching.
Well, I'll just say this. People love to hate Harvard. They love to hate Hollywood. I am very disappointed in Harvard right now.
Right.
I've been very vocal about that. I think they have allowed rancid wokeism to leach into the mainstream of the institution. I think they have been cowardly in the face of it. But I went to Harvard. I know you're going to say, there she's dropping it again. Just can't help myself. I'm kidding. I met my best friends there. I had a wonderful dorm. I had wonderful professors. I'm not going to smear Harvard with one broad brush.
Right.
And I just want you to know in this conversation, I'm not trying to smear Hollywood with one broad brush. I have this book right here about great movies. You know, I did a show recently on Audrey Hepburn. I think Hollywood has been an amazing place. I'll be really blunt with you. I think it's gone into a dumpster fire recently. But I just want you to know
I'm not going to argue that because
I'm not smearing it with one
No,
broad
and I'm
brush.
not-
And
I
it's
don't-
not.
Hollywood is not my kind of representation. I'm not like looking. People don't. I'm not like a Hollywood guy. I think just because I'm like a
Right.
family. I'm like a family guy. By the way, I love the show Family Guy. And that makes fun of everybody. That's kind of like been grandfathered in that you
Right.
could make jokes. And by the way, some jokes on Family Guy, I'm like, wow, that was really an anti-Semitic joke. That was really like an anti-gay joke or anti-black joke. And it's
Right.
like, you know, obviously anti-Semitic things are going to hit me because that's my thing. That's who I am. So, you know, everybody. But I understand that like that show makes fun of people across the board. Like, if you are a conservative person, there's not a lot to like in Hollywood now because there's no voice for that. And then not only that, but it like comes out it just comes out. It's very strident and it's very like preachy. And I don't do anything like, again, like I keep politics completely out. And most of the people I work with also are like, you know, we'll talk. It was for the last 4 years. It was it didn't take long to get away from anything we were talking from a lunch order to anything about Trump. Like I was like, I think we're just talking about do people want to go to Sweet Greens? And because people have that, and you know, when people have that, and I said, yeah, I guess it's upsetting. I don't want that to leach into what I'm saying. I want characters to talk about just, and I didn't even deal with COVID on my show. They're like, how are you dealing with COVID? I was like, I want things to be positive, and unfortunately, like everything, I don't like watching things that are preached at me. I don't like being preached at. I don't know, I just watch, I want to laugh again.
It's a hard job, I can imagine, being
Yeah.
a showrunner. And
It's impossible. Look at me. I'm 32 years old. Look at this face. I'm your age. No, you're not 30. I'm guessing. By the way, there was nothing more depressing than when you told me that COVID interrupted college. That means you're my
That's so
daughter's age.
funny.
This is so depressing.
well,
I hope you picked
I
something.
promise you what was more
Is there
depressing.
a filter? What the hell? Why do you have Norman Lear on your show?
I can promise you what's more depressing than you're saying that I'm your daughter's age is my college experience being totally side railed by COVID.
Can you show something
Sure.
that's terrible on this? And again, I wish I had a take on what sold. I think at the end of the day, you know, the things people watch are like my favorite show of recent years was Succession, and I don't know the politics of anybody involved in Succession. It wasn't. I know
Sean's
it was
nodding.
Okay, it is a great show, and I guess it was like Rupert Murdoch-y, but like there are characters. I love challenging people to find things. You know, I like to challenge people to find the gray and to like something in somebody that you don't agree with.
Yes.
And like I saw this thing on Trump, and there's a lot of bad stuff on Trump. You could probably Google it. But I saw this thing like where he touched a veteran didn't have hands, and so he touched his face. And that's like something I was like, wow. Like there's a lot to hate about Trump, and you probably feel differently. But like I was like, but that's really sweet. Like he touched his face because he knew that that's where the guy had touched. Like it wasn't like something broadcast. And there's a lot of things like that I thought like, oh, that's really interesting. And that if you could challenge people to kind of think a little differently. But again, that's not my job. I think when Hollywood sees its role as to force feed their agenda down someone's throat, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why people do that. And I don't think everybody feels that way. I don't think everybody I think the majority of people probably are, again, like somewhere in the middle, but you kind of get forced into certain storytelling, and you know, maybe that's why it's harder for me to, you know, get a show on the air than if I came out with this, you know, very, very strong agenda. But you have to, for me, I'm purely about commerce. Like, I'm guessing we're going to say 50 plus or minus percent. We're going to find out in November, you know, or 48% of the country feels different than Hollywood does. Probably anywhere from 48 to 51% of the country feels different than Hollywood does. So it seems to me that I don't know why you wouldn't put out something that everybody could watch. Like, that's the thing. Like, I won't watch Sex and the City just because it's kind of like,
skip it.
No, it seems like a caricature of itself, and
it is, and it's sad. But I recognize that it's a hard thing being, you know, in any job. But it's hard right now. I can imagine being a showrunner, because look, shows right now, you know, when you have a show, you mirror elements of culture, or
right.
You know, and right now the culture is woke. So I understand when shows mirror some elements of the culture,
yes.
namely wokeism. And I also understand, of course, that, you know, if you're doing a show on the antebellum, you know, South, you want to have certain characters that are more culturally aligned or historically aligned with the period that you're representing on TV. I'm not anti, right. you know, having a woman for a woman's role. I'm not anti, you know, mirroring, some wokeism on the screen. It's a hard thing. And for someone like, you know, I've seen these showrunners and, you know, have to apologize for things that they put on 30 years ago. It's like, it's just, that's such BS.
Yes, a lot of it does. And by the way, I'm a different person than I was 30 years ago, but
right,
I'm not saying that.
You're just trying to make people laugh and entertain and mirror the culture. It's a hard, I'm just saying I recognize it's a hard thing.
It's very, very difficult. You know, one of my favorite shows also, I don't know if your producer will like this one as much, probably my favorite, like, I don't know what to call it, comedy, was Beef this year. I don't know if you saw Beef. So Beef,
I don't watch anything. I just read. Sean, have you seen Beef?
Beef was an all Asian cast, all Asian. It was created by an Asian writer who my sister knew, and because she worked with him, of course, she's not going to like it as much as I did. If he worked for me, I wouldn't like the show either. Yeah. But it had like a very specific point of view, and the people were tribal in that, like, you know, they're very proud Asians, but it wasn't like, it didn't look weird that all these Asians were hanging out together. It didn't look weird because that was their community, and they have community. And it's very difficult to do a show about community now because you didn't, you know, I want to, you know, if I want to pitch a show right now, I'm looking at a show about Jewish singles. And it's just like, and Jewish singles, by the way, very, very diverse, very looking, you know, there's.
I know many.
Yes. So, you know, one end of the spectrum, you to me, they look like. But, you know, it's very difficult because it's like, oh, that seems monolithic. And that's the sad thing for me, when you do that and you don't just tell stories that are just like stories about, I think people want love. I think people want acceptance, whether it's, you know, a trans love story or not. And by the way, there's a place for a trans love story, but like, I don't think every family probably doesn't have a trans kid. I think every family doesn't have somebody married. Like, I like the fact, like, for this Asian person, his experience was that Asian people typically marry Asian people, and they feel comfortable marrying. And again, I'm not saying that everybody should marry within their race. You should marry someone you love who has similar values, you know, et cetera. But, like, I like the fact that it just was. You know, I mean, it didn't express it wasn't like a fantasy. Maybe it was a fantasy thing, but it was just like great acting, great writing, interesting story. And then, like, I think it was like episode 3, I was like, Shai, you notice that every single person on this show is Asian? Like, it's like, and like, yeah. And it was, and it's like, and all the writers and the directors were, it's like, because that was their point of view. And I thought, like, wow, this is wonderful. And this is like, you didn't feel like they were jamming this cultural thing down. You were like, wow, this is like a really cool insight into that culture, into just like a story about rage, which everyone feels, and love.
That's right.
Rage and love, man.
I mean, as corny as it sounds, we really do all have more in common with one another than we don't.
Right.
And yeah,
I mean, I'm not trying to preach it. To me,
No,
what I
no,
think, like, my daughter also was, who apparently is your age. I thought you and I were the same age, but I guess we're not. My wife makes fun of me for that because I consider myself that age.
In spirit, you identify as though you're that
I
age.
do. By the way, that
hey,
does
let's go
not
with
work.
it.
That does not work.
You're in Hollywood. You can
Yes.
identify as whatever you want.
I guess so. I don't know. It doesn't seem to work for me. But so my wife is part Native American, and you wouldn't tell because she looks like you, but she's part
Cool.
Native American. And so my daughter is Jewish, Native American. And the first day, she's a great writer, and she had to write something for creative writing class. So she wrote a story about her grandfather and how he wanted to marry someone with light eyes because he did not want to experience the racism that he got. And it was an assimilation story, and and he talked about the pain of being, having to use a separate water fountain, having to be beat up, having to be called names and
Yes.
stuff like that. Like, you don't even know this about, like, I mean, it's very, very sad. And like, my kids are very proudly, identify as, Native Americans. They're very, very proud of that. Did not use that on college applications. I should have.
I know,
But
why
I know,
not?
why not?
And
but,
they wouldn't be lying about it. Like
No, they
so
wouldn't be
many
I know,
who,
yes.
I know who lie.
Yes, that you could test them. They actually have tribal numbers. They have tribal cards, and and proud because it's a great heritage, and it's a great there's so many great things about it. And when you read about this, so my daughter wrote this story about her great grandfather, and the teacher read it and said, "I have to stop you. How does this make people feel? Are people uncomfortable?" And they went around the room, and somebody said, "I feel like I was just at a KKK rally." So, okay, my daughter is a Jewish Native American. Like, they were very few Jewish Native Americans at KKK rallies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so they went around, and the teacher said, "You can't write about this. It's cultural appropriation." And she said, "No, but it's my grandfather." And they said, "Still, it makes people uncomfortable." So, like, to me, it's like, what are we doing? Like, where's the conversation? Like, where's the conversation? It was, first of all, it's creative writing. Even it seems that you should be able to write creatively about something, but that made me really sad. And I don't know, maybe that the sadness is that, like, these people are going to be the future writers, and if that's the case, then Hollywood does not have a prayer of being more open-minded. But, like, I think, going back to what I said, like, being open-minded that there are different opinions, and that, and I didn't even know, like, these things that trigger people, and these things that, like, the trigger and woke and stuff like that. So you say woke, I don't know. I mean, I guess, that's woke as a pejorative, and I don't know if anybody uses woke as maybe woke started off as
I honestly use it as not pejorative. I mean,
Right.
you know how I feel about it.
Right.
But I use it as an objective, like, term
Right.
for what this is, which is truly
right.
out of the realm of normalcy, I believe. I mean, to have
Right.
a teacher say that your daughter is culturally appropriating her great
Her
grandfather,
culture, right.
that is out of the
And
realm
they
of
said
normalcy.
that because she doesn't look that way, and that was, to me, was sad. It's like, well, it's creative, even if I didn't.
All
By the way,
these-
I'm not an advocate for this. I have, like, again, my one thing I did advocate for was, like, I wanted only women directors, and some of the high level women on my show said, "Can we get some dudes in here?" And I was like, no, this is kind of my thing. Like, I think it's really great. And we had a woman director who was in her 60s and couldn't get hired. And I was like, I think this is really great because there's more ageism I see now. Like, even though I'm only 32, my stressful job, I see that, and I thought that was really terrific. And one of my directors was, she was, I guess she was an Aboriginal Australian, and she said, "I know I got hired because I'm diverse." And I said, "I honestly I didn't know you were, I don't know your background. I loved your reel, and you were fantastic." And it made her feel, like, so good that she didn't, like, you could look at her and be like,
yeah, you're actually more than just what you were.
Right.
I mean,
and the same way that I would be,
have
it would be
merit.
so much pressure. And by the way, that's the thing about being Jewish. Like, as a religious Jew, I am the rabbi on the show, and that puts a lot of pressure on me because every time I say something, it's like, oh, that's what a Jew says. Like, not in a bad way, but it's like I have to live up to something. And I think for a lot of people, my first producer on Trial and Error, starring John Lithgow, Sherry Shepard. John, I think, might have gone to Harvard. But like Marlise Pujols was she was Cuban American. I didn't know this, and this is kind of dumb on me, and I know I should be more proactive. But she's like, she was talking about diversity programs, and she said it's really. I don't want people to think I got hired here just because of this. I said, what is your thing? Like, she said, I'm Cuban. I said, oh, I didn't know. And so I'm really colorblind. Like, I'm an idiot. Like,
shame on you
I know.
for being
No, but
colorblind.
Right. So
How
that was a
terrible.
thing, she said that. She said, unfortunately, and I see this also, I think there should be more opportunity for sure for people of color to get in. But I also think that, and people who don't necessarily have access to it, but I don't think they should be left to be promoted to be showrunners I think that they should go through, I think it's anybody
merit.
should go through, but also like get in the thing. I always hire people from diversity programs because I want to give these people who, any young people who want to learn. And then if it's for you, I think it's a terrible business. I tell everybody of every color, get out of here. But like, no, but my last show
I
was only
appreciate that honesty.
no, it's terrible business. I'm 28. If you're watching, don't do this job.
Well, I think the bottom line is, at least from my perspective, I understand that Hollywood, because you're telling stories about culture,
Right.
in a way sort of needs to have some elements of this woke stuff. You do need to look out for people's skin color or background or genitalia. If you're
Right.
doing a show about, women in Puritan, colonial America, you're going to need to cast women. Or if you're doing a show about the Jim Crow South, you're going to need to cast Black people. I get that. But I think that now, to your point, and with all of this discussion, it's just gone too far. It's gone way too far.
I just don't think, for me, I don't think woke is like having like, I would have no problem. Again, my friends run this show, The Neighborhood. They run In Living Color. They're two guys who are even older than I am and two white guys. And, I think that show probably should have, because Cedric the Entertainer is, has a point of view. I think it's very difficult. And they told me they've written some stories that he's like, nah, I'm not uncomfortable with that. I get it. I totally get that. That to me is not being woke. That's being authentic to the character.
Right.
I think for me, my problem is it's like, do you have, like I was going to do my show, Shining Vale said, we always did like homages to horror movies. And I said, oh, I want to do the Babadook. And they said, oh, is it because are you doing a queer storyline? And I said, because the Babadook apparently has a, no, so, but I didn't know this. It's like I said, I don't think so. I said, I think like one of my writers was queer, I guess. I don't know, she a lesbian woman, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say any of the terms I just said. But
shame on you.
It's
again on this show.
By the way,
you don't have to worry.
Here, but in case all the Hollywood people are watching this, no, she was my best. By the way, my best writer. I love her, Nora Nolan, and people are gonna be like, Nora's gay? What?
That's homophobic of them.
Yes, no, but so I don't like. Yes, if I had to do a queer storyline, and again, it's not if she came up with what if this would be a great thing for this character, I'd be like, yes, but I wouldn't be like, now we have to introduce the trans character, now we have to do this. Because it's just not my point of view. And by the way, if you're doing a show about, trans people, and by far, I would have nothing to contribute to that show. So that's fine. But if you're doing a show that says 90% of the country thinks this way, I think it's wrong. And I just think Hollywood's missing out on like that middle sweet part of the country. Like,
I really appreciate your saying this. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate.
And we're going to miss you in Hollywood. No, but that's why I'm saying, like, I didn't know this was a conservative thing. I don't think this is conservative.
No,
it's not.
I think
this is like, I want to keep working, and I'm not like, I consider myself to be like, open-minded.
It's
feel
not a
privileged
conservative thing. I think
I'm alive.
At the beginning of the show, when I acknowledge the elephant in the room, you'll notice I said I view this as a common sense show.
Right.
All I was trying to say is that yes, I wear the badge of being conservative proudly, but it's just a shame nowadays that common sense, and this has been, I think you've said this all throughout. The given examples, just common sense is now so villainized. It's common sense for your daughter to do a project on her great grandfather. Right. It's not common sense to say that she was culturally appropriating. You know,
I
that's
think,
just all
yeah,
gone out the
I mean,
window.
that's really a bummer for her. And of course she sees
And for
me.
our generation, I mean, I'm sorry
Yes.
to cut you off, but I just
For our
want
generation. Go
yeah,
on.
for ours.
Our
But-
generation. See that, Shawnee?
That's right. I do. We have limited time, and I do want to get on to the really fun stuff.
This
but
isn't the fun stuff?
It is the fun
By
stuff,
the way, as you
but-
can see, I could talk for hours.
No, this has all been so fun. I mean, like the totally militantly non-political, just like smut, dirt, and gossip from Hollywood,
Well,
man.
there we go. That's
What
me.
are the
I'm
celebs
smart.
like?
Um,
But my generation, I just want to say this, and of course I want to hear your reaction, but my generation has been screwed over.
Oh, it's
we
the-
have been screwed over. We have been by people who on social media in Hollywood, and I'm not trying to refer to your industry as a monolith, but
I wish it was my industry. I'm looking for a job if anyone's looking.
that's right. But I appreciate your being really honest about the great upsides of Hollywood, and there are so many, and also the areas where this has gone too far. But my generation has been screwed over because we've had these cultural influences come at us that America is horrible,
Yeah.
and that things are racist and sex. I mean, we've had all this stuff now, and it's just a shame. And I think there's a real opportunity for Hollywood. And of course, some elements of Hollywood are telling good stories, but it's a shame because there's a wide open opportunity right now to tell really good stories and stories that elevate our country.
I think it would be great.
few
I think
people are doing it.
I do agree, and I tell my kids this. I was like, I said the good news and the bad news is that you're part of the worst generation in history.
Yep.
Because everything is social media. Everything is you're presented. You could get dating is impossible. You don't like everything.
Dating is impossible.
Everything is. And by the way, my kids are religious kids. Like their dating is very, very different. But than my dating was.
My generation
Grown-ups?
is so messed up, and everything you're saying is true. And again, at the risk of, I'm not trying to paint Hollywood as a monolith. I'm not saying that every single person in Hollywood.
I
has
don't
done
watch enough
this.
TV shows. Maybe I should watch more.
But I'm going to be really blunt here. I mean, I see what companies like Disney are, the shows that they're making
Right.
for kids, and there are it's crazy, and so no wonder we're confused.
I also
No
don't like.
wonder.
I'm also like. It's funny because I'm very prudish. I don't like on my shows. I don't show any sex. Also because I think maybe that's why my shows don't stay in the air. But no, because I always talk to my wife. Like we watched this movie last night, which I thought was pretty good, called Hitman, and I thought it was good. But like we show these people kissing, and it's like they're not married. Like they're gonna go home, and like how do you do that? Like how do you not fall? I fall in love with anybody who kissed me. Like that's my thing. But I just think it's like I don't know. There's nothing wholesome, and maybe that I don't
Yes,
think that
we
paints me
want
as a
wholesome.
conservative. But like, I don't think you need that. Again, I loved Succession. I loved it because the characters were pure and written, and you knew. I'm sorry, they didn't seem written. They seemed like these are things people would say. And the same thing with Beef, and there are certain shows out there that are not trying to push an agenda.
You're right.
And I think that's the problem. Like for Disney, I don't need to see anybody kiss in a Disney show. I need to see.
Well, especially with kids. I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm criticizing there is the kid shows, which have gotten, not all of them, but many are so rancidly woke and anti-American. And I think
Yeah, I don't think it should
blatantly
be. I don't
racist.
think it should be anti-American, and I hate that just because you have nowhere to. Where you're going to go? Like you're
Yeah,
going to tear apart America because it still is like.
Well, I think the people who criticize, maybe you'll contribute to this GoFundMe. I think the people who are out there chanting death to America and burning the American flag, I think that they should be funded by a GoFundMe set up by me for a one-way ticket to any country of their choice.
Right.
Iran, China,
Right.
Russia, go.
Yeah, I forgot.
Go.
Winston Churchill said like democracy is the worst form of government
Yeah.
until there's a better one. But I think that there are great people out there, and I want those voices to be heard, and I wish they could be heard. I wish I could be one of them to say like great things. That's not like And also, by the way, when you talk about, unfortunately, I think the spokesperson for the Republicans is, I think Trump is a terrible mouthpiece for like I want my kids to be that in the same way. Like you know what I mean? Like
Do you think Biden's a good one?
no, I don't. I don't. I told my sister today, I was like, I wish it would be like, they would have a death match. And by the way, death match would probably be going on a long hike for both of them, and then start new. And I think that's like the same thing in Israel. Like there's young people, I think, who really want peace and acceptance and open-mindedness. And I wish that they were cut off from TV and social media. I think there's got to be a generation that's cut off from that and just grows to, I don't know, just be people. And I think having God is super important for me. That's kind of what my book is. Like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't take 25 hours off a week, Friday nights. Wow. I didn't to be with my family and my wife and my kids, and to give my kids a blessing every Friday night before Sunday. I give a blessing. I said, "This is what I'm proud of you for this week." I wish someone said that to me.
Well, let's do that. Let's talk about that. We, as I said, we have limited time. You'll just have to come back on, and we'll talk about all kinds of other things.
Hopefully, I'll be too busy.
Well, I hope so too. I hope not for my sake, but I hope so for your sake.
How about I could promote my next show with famous people?
No, that's...
And mug for the camera.
You can, about my favorite. Millions.
Maybe they went to Harvard. A lot of people go to Harvard.
millions of people watch the show, so, it would be great promotion for you. No sarcasm. Yes. Just some rapid fire questions about your life, and they're going to have to be... You'll come on again.
Okay.
But they'll have to be rapid fire because of our time. Favorite episode that you wrote of Friends?
The one with all the poker.
What's it about? Oh, the hands? Joey's hand twin?
No,
Is that the one?
that wasn't me.
Oh.
That wasn't. It was the one with all the poker. It's when it really just was like it was just like they have a series of poker games, the guys against the girls, and then Rachel at the end, Rachel needs a win, and Ross kind of folds. And the reason I like it is because I came up with my favorite joke, and people always misquote it to me, where Rachel comes in and goes, "You'll never guess what happened," and you won't know the reference because you're young. And Chandler goes, "The fifth dentist cave. Now they all recommend Trident." And back when I was a kid, maybe some of your audience will remember, it was 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident. So you wonder who the one dentist was who didn't recommend Trident. So
that's funny.
Thank you very much. But the reason I like it is because sitcoms are they're room written, they're gang written. And this one, my partner, Mike Sikowitz, and I had a majority of the jokes in the show, and and it was great. That was my favorite episode.
Wow. Oh gosh. Okay, so I want to follow up on the gang written thing, but I guess another rapid fire one is what makes a good story? I asked earlier, throw politics out of it. What do people want to see?
I think people want to see, I think you want to see people who you can relate to going through. I think it's like, I just said this about a show I'm pitching now. I'm pitching a Western. I think it's like the thing about, stakes make a good story. I like having life and death stakes. I think the comedy could be bigger if the stakes are life and death. And I think that you want to see characters behave, even if they're flawed. Characters need to be flawed. But unfortunately, I always get this note. It's like the character's unlikable. And that's like the death of TV, the character's unlikable. Archie Bunker, not a likable character,
Holden
but
Caulfield.
Lovable. Yes.
Yeah.
But, there's so many classic characters, not likable, but lovable. And we got this on Old Christine, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, not likable, but lovable. You know what I mean? Like, you want to see characters who are flawed, and you want to root for them, and you want to see them, I don't know, I always think you want to see a happy ending. I think people really want to see a happy ending. It makes me sad when shows don't end happy, because so much of the world right now is not a happy ending yet. And I think that
I like that you added yet.
Yeah, and it will be. And it's like, but I think, it's escapism. I think it should be something that you relate to, and not, I hate being preached to in either way. And in either way, I don't like being preached to. I like for me, it's, when I watch something, that's very difficult for me to watch something, because I see, like, if I'm in post-production, I notice every fuzzy boundary of where they burned an image in and post, and the sound, I hear sound wherever I'm in the process of doing it. Like, I'm very tuned to that. But if I could watch a show that doesn't seem written, and I see like the characters are really talking to each other and having a conversation, and where I could escape for 22 minutes, and I love that, man. I love that. It's very hard to find now.
Charles Dickens, I recently read one of his books, and I don't need to tell you this. He makes these.
Yes. He got paid by the word.
You drop Courtney Cox first.
All right.
He makes these characters very exaggerated.
Right.
Miss Havisham in Great Expectations is this very exaggerated, like, kind of closet shroud woman. You as a writer, do you sort of see people in life in a Dickens way? Like if you're, are you, in other words, are you going to write, not to be grandiose with me, but are you going to write me into one of your scripts? Do you walk around and look at people and go, that could be a good character in this show that I do, or that?
Yeah,
that
I do.
person...
I always try to base it on something real. My idea for, again, Sherry Shepherds, who had facial blindness, was I had a a chiropractor who couldn't tell faces. He couldn't see faces. He was just completely blind. I thought that would be a really funny person to work for a detective agency. And then I just gave her every other, weird disorder. But but for that, it was like he recognized me from behind. I was like, oh, that's not nice. I can't, I was like, oh.
Do you walk around in life, like when you're at the pharmacy and you're interacting with someone, are you looking for
if I see I'm not looking for people, but if I think something is funny, it's like, oh, that's a good character. I have to use that.
So what's your process? Do you write it down then immediately?
No,
or what?
It's so stupid. I don't write. I like write in my head, and I'll write down the whole thing, and then I'll have to do it over and over again until I get down to a keyboard. I'll write it down longhand, and then eventually it will come out. But like it goes through, it's whatever my mind is. I have like very twitchy mind, so like I'll remember certain things from this conversation. I think, oh, that would be a good thing. That would be a good character. But I think that people, my wife watches the morning show, and I thought like the characters were too one-dimensional. I like characters that I'm pitching something to Apple. Guys, I love the morning show. No, but like sometimes, by the way, a stupid character, always funny. And a character but if you're going to go stupid, do the dumbest.
How you doing?
Yes. But Joey had like a heart, and I think a character has to have a heart.
Was Joey too stupid?
Sometimes we said sometimes I would make a joke that like the refrigerator magnets are going to fly off and hit him in the head. But, every now and again you had to give him some wisdom. I mean, in order to ground it. The rule was basically, if it's a great joke, then no, he's not too stupid. But
that's interesting.
Yes. I mean, that's what, like, the great joke always wins. I don't know, he endured. Matt LeBlanc, great guy. Love the guy.
Stop name drop. I'm kidding.
Very good guy.
Keep name dropping.
I've had very, very few experiences where I didn't like the people I work with. I've been
great
very, very blessed.
I'm not name dropping. I would never would on the show. That's not to criticize you for doing that.
I like to have names.
Well, no, because you work with these people.
By the way, I'm very lucky. You talk about. I'm very lucky. I've worked for 32 straight years, and I hope to God willing, not another 32, but another 10.
You can name drop because you work with these celebrities. When I said I don't name drop, it's because I've grown up in Hollywood, and in my professional career, I would never bring stories of someone I have. I just don't roll that way. But what I will say is that from the many celebrities who I've met growing up in this world, many are super nice.
Oh yeah,
super, super nice. So that's just corroborating what you say. Like, really nice.
At Courtney's house the other night, like so many people, and again it was like I was outside myself because I don't fit into that group. I think people just thought, oh, someone invited Elvis Costello, but I was like, wow, these people just like. I think that people like to just get away and not, and not be angry, not be scared. And everybody there is just like, and one of the reasons, getting back to my book, and I do have to go to the bathroom in a moment.
Oh, don't worry. We're ending in like 3 minutes.
And you may have to go on camera for 1 minute solid. But like I saw these people were really unhappy and had all the money in the world. I was like, maybe that's not it. And I was like, maybe that's not the key, is having all the money and fame in the world. And that's why that's what opened me up to thinking of something more than that.
Finally, and then I know you got to go to the bathroom.
Thank you. Please edit the part out where I said I have to go to the bathroom.
All the millions watching it live heard it, and they'll hold it against you forever. We'll have to do a follow-up because there's still so much we didn't even discuss. And I thank you so much for your time today. I want to ask, what do you wish you knew when you were my age?
That everything was going to be okay.
Was it all okay?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I got a great wife. I got a great family. I'm breathing. I'm alive. I wake up every morning and thank God that I'm alive. And, my neuroses and, my mind gets away from me. But like in this moment, I mean, this is fantastic. Before I get the feedback for this, it's great. By the way, I don't look at things like that. I don't look at things in woke and unwoke, black and white.
That's
and maybe
right.
Maybe I should. But yeah, just that I was going to marry a good woman, that I was going to have great kids, that I would be, have good friends. I wish I knew that, but you can't. You can't know. You have to experience it. That's it. I wish I knew how to speak another language. I don't. I'm terrible at languages. There, I said it, guys.
Go learn Spanish.
Yeah, I wish.
No, thank you. This has been so wonderful, and I really appreciate your honesty. I try to give this show a long form format because we need to make America nuanced again. We need to give people time to.
I'm not going to get on board with your "Make America Anything Again,"
Hey,
but
all right.
I think America still is. I think America still is.
Well, I think there are some people who are trying to destroy it, and I think we need to revive it. But we. I won't. You don't have to respond to that. You're like.
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
It's not like I'm afraid of anything. I just I think I'm trying to be hopeful. I am really, and people are like, oh, I really am an optimistic person, and you have to be. I'm really an optimistic.
I'm an optimistic person too, but I think we need to wise up to the moment our country's in, and I don't even think this is left versus right anymore. I always say this about my vote for Trump. In many ways, I think he has done terrible things. I don't endorse everything he's ever said and done, but my vote for him right now is a civilizational vote. It's not left versus right. Anyway. You're like, how do we get back to politics by the end? Let's keep name dropping celebs. Let's just end by name dropping all these people.
By the way, I did not endorse that, Hollywood.
No, thank you for a nuanced conversation. Seriously, about many things. I hope to have you back.
Yay.
And And
buy this book, Elevated Pictures for God.
That's
really great things. Me, Spider-Man, Julie, other people. Amazing.
Late senators, chemists, physicists, and us.
Yes.
Thank you again.
The whole spectrum. Thank you.
Take care.
Great.
Bye, everyone.